Are you thinking about upgrading your starter home, but you're feeling overwhelmed about the whole process? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the key things that I think are important for you to focus on to make this a stress-free experience. Before we dive in the video, if you want to discuss anything about real estate in the GTA, you can always text me at the number here on screen. We can chat about what you are curious about in your specific market. Whether it's Mississauga, Brampton, Toronto, Oakville, Burlington, we've got you covered from the GTA all the way out to Waterloo. Feel free to reach out to me once again at the number here on screen and we can get you started. Now let's dive in. We've got 5 tips from making your transition from house 1 to house 2, especially if you want to reduce the stress in this transaction. Now the first key point we're going to talk about is your home's equity. Before you're going to make this transition from your first to your next property, you need to understand where your home equity is actually at. Let's use the example that you bought your home for $500,000 and it's now appreciated in value to maybe $600,000. The simple math here is that you have $100,000 in equity, but there's other things you need to consider, like the expenses that are going to come along with the transaction. So you have $100,000 in equity. However, let's subtract what those costs actually add up to and then see where you're left at the end of the day. All right, so let's say you're gonna sell your $600,000 home. We'll punch it in on a calculator here, times it by your 5%, which is the typical commission that you're gonna spend to compensate the buyer and the seller side, which would be about $30,000. Now, on top of that $30,000, you actually have to spend another 13%, which is the HST. The HST portion gets paid to the agents, which then we pay it on our taxes to the government. So we've got our commissions plus our HST. Let's say that you're going to go buy another home, maybe $200,000 more. Let's say you're going to spend about $800,000. Your land transfer tax would be roughly around $16,000. So right now we're at $49,900. Once we add up those two things, the other factors that you need to consider are, is there a mortgage penalty that you're actually going to incur by selling your home? For this demonstration, we're going to say there's no actual penalty, so we'll leave that off. Let's add on some moving costs here. Let's say it's going to cost you about $2,000 to move, plus your lawyer fees. You have 2 transactions here, the buy and the sell side, so let's add both those up to approximately $3,000 in transactions from the lawyer side of things. Let's just round this number. So right now, as you can see here, $54,900 in some of the expenses that you've incurred here when you're selling your property. We're also encompassing the land transfer tax on the buy of your new property. So we've got about 55 grand. Let's say you had 100,000 in equity. What we're doing here is we're subtracting those two. So you have about $45,000 in equity in your property. So now we know how much you have. You can use that money going forward on the purchase side of things. Knowing your equity is extremely important. Point number 2, choosing the right time to sell. It is simply not as easy as just throwing a sign on your lawn, not thinking about the strategy that is in front of us, and just trying to sell your home. There's better times and there's worse times to sell your home. And if you're talking about today's specific market, it's a little bit challenging, I'm not going to lie. If you're selling a home in today's market, you have to consider what a lot of the factors are. Is the interest rates going to play a big key factor for the buyers that are coming in? Or maybe for you as the seller, does the interest rates that are currently out there, whether it's a variable or a fixed, really matter for you on your purchase or your sales side of things? The other thing we need to consider is, what time of year is it? Generally, there's 2 good markets in the real estate year, so to speak. There's the spring market and then there's the fall market. If you're going to sell in the winter or if you're going to sell in the summer, you have to understand that those are generally slower times, so it might take a little bit longer to move your home because people generally, when it's cold, when the snow is built up outside, they're not looking to buy a home as intently as somebody who might be in the spring market when the weather is nicer. They can see the landscaping, maybe they're interested in a pool, and you can see a lot of these things on the properties that you're looking at. On the flip side, summertime, if you have kids, they're done school, you're enjoying your vacation together, you're spending time, the last thing you want to do is actually go looking at houses and conduct a whole move in the summertime when you have plans to actually enjoy yourself with your family in the summertime. So keep in mind, the seasonality also makes a big difference. However, if you're buying and selling, you're going to get the best of both worlds. So you're going to get the ability to negotiate and the difficulty to sell if you choose one of the more difficult markets. Third point that I want to discuss here to make this a stress-free experience, and when I say stress-free, I mean we are just preparing ourselves to know everything before we make the move. A move is always going to be stressful. You can't reduce that to no stress at all. But the third point is just understanding what the budget looks like for your next home. You might be increasing your mortgage. Maybe your utility payments might go up with a little bit of a bigger home. Maybe the area that you're looking to move might have higher property taxes as well. Think about what those budgeting factors are. Maybe you're buying a home that needs a new kitchen and needs some upgrades, or maybe you're buying a home that has everything done in it already. Consider the possibilities on either end of these spectrums, so that way you're prepared going into the process. Don't go and have to figure it out and wing it as you're going. It's only going to create more stress for you and your family during this whole entire process. Point number 4 here that we're going to discuss is, what do you actually need in this new home? So you've bought your first house. A lot of us just buy our first house based on price, and maybe we're not thinking so intently on what we actually need in that home. The second property, a lot of things might have changed. Maybe you and your partner are now married. Maybe there's kids in the situation. Maybe your job situation has changed. What do you actually need this home to have? Do you need a home office? Do you need additional bedrooms for multiple kids? Maybe you have kids now and you just need more space altogether. A lot of these were not considered the first time around, but you have to think about them the second time around. What are these non-negotiable things? The way I like to approach making a list for myself when I'm doing the move personally, and the way I encourage it through my clients, is pick the things that you absolutely need and make a list of those, the non-negotiables. And then underneath that list, kind of give yourself a little bit of a line, give yourself a little bit of separation, and then give me the wants. What do you want to be in this next home? It's rare that you're going to get 10 things out of 10 things and check every single box. But what ultimately I suggest you're looking for is a 6 or 7 out of 10 or better. If you're looking for 6 or 7 out of 10, the best part about those is you are actually going to be able to negotiate with the seller because it's not perfect. It needs a few things. Maybe you're going to be able to get that at a more palatable price than you would something that's a 10 out of 10. On the flip side, if you are going for that 10 out of 10, you might be looking forever, but you're also going to be competing with everybody else because a 10 out of 10 is a 10 out of 10. Everybody is going to want that same property. So you might find yourself overpaying for it ultimately at the end of the day, which sometimes that's okay if you're going to live in that house forever. But I suggest buy a 6 or 7 out of 10 and make it the 10 out of 10. Use that money that you saved, not having to go crazy on the purchase price, and put that into the renovations and customizing your dream home from that already great home that you have found. And point number 5 is coordinating the actual sale and purchase of your property. Depending on what the market situation looks like, we will use today's market specifically. People are sometimes buying conditional on the sale of their home. So you need to understand, if you're selling your home, is it possible that the buyer presents you a nice offer, but it's also contingent on them selling their property? Or is it just contingent on a home inspection, a financing condition, maybe reviewing some documentation if you're in a condo corporation? Just prepare yourself with your agent. Like myself, I always prepare my clients for what that current market is doing because it's always shifting. We need to know what the strategies are at play, especially if you are getting in both ends of the transactions. If you're buying and selling, you need to understand what you can do on one side, but what you can't do on the other. And we need to advise you correctly. The last thing we want you to do is go ahead and buy a property, not contingent on the sale of your own, but you cannot sell your house. What do you think is going to happen if you go ahead and do that? You are going to get yourself in a very, very difficult situation where you don't have the cash to close the deal. You're going to lose the home and also potentially put yourself in legal jeopardy with the other seller. So make sure your agent is advising you correctly. Work with somebody who's experienced, who understands what the market is like. That way you can be prepared as you are going through and understand what the advantages you can have in the market and the disadvantages that you actually can deal with. I hope this video was helpful for you. So these are 5 tips that I've provided for you. If you are thinking of making that transition from your first to your second house, I hope this is going to provide you with just a little bit less stress when it comes to making that movement. If you want to discuss real estate with me, if you are in the GTA or any of the surrounding areas, you can always text me at the number here on screen. I'd be happy to discuss with you what is going on in your specific market. If you want some of the resources that we provide all of our clients free of charge, you can look in the description box down below, and you got a buyer's guide, a seller's guide, and our Carpino Cares Method on how we like to handle the transition from your first home to your next home. My name is Mike Carpino. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.